Okay, think about this for a second. You want to open an offshore bank account. So you go to your favorite search engine, you type in where to bank offshore, and you get a bunch of articles that list top countries that you should be considering. So far, so good. But here's the problem. 50% of these countries on these lists are not offshore. And the banks here, they don't accept non-residents. Another 30%, they typically require deposits above $1 million. So not great for the average person. And the remaining 20% of the countries that they list, that's where you start to run into real problems. These are countries that are legitimately going to put your money, or at least your access to your money, at serious risk. And I'm not talking about quasi-fake jurisdictions in the middle of Africa that aren't even recognized by the UN. I'm talking about real countries that major media outlets and international gurus are telling you are good places to bank. And frankly, we think they're crazy. And we actually encourage our clients not to bank in these places. So in this video, we're exposing 11 countries that gurus tell you to bank in that we think you should probably be avoiding. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, my name is Chris. I'm the head of banking relationships at GlobalBanks. We're a team of banking experts who help businesses and individuals solve their cross-border banking challenges. I spend my time speaking to bankers, uncovering new opportunities, and helping our clients make the most out of their international banking relationships. Now, when it comes to choosing where to open accounts offshore, there are a wide range of variables that you should be considering. And one of the most important variables is your reason for banking offshore. Yes, you also need to consider your deposit level, your transaction activity, the client profile, risk profile, countries involved, and a lot of other variables. But right now, I want you to focus on your reason for banking offshore. And here's why. All of the countries that I'm about to mention, they can be reasonable places to open accounts. This is a big if you live in the country, if you do business in the country, if you invest or own real estate in the country, or if you spend a considerable amount of time in the country as a tourist. But we're talking about offshore banking, which means we're looking at opening accounts in countries where you do not live, you do not do business, you do not own real estate, and in most cases, you don't spend a lot of time there as a tourist. Now, like I said, we're going to talk through 11 countries, and the first one that we're going to discuss is Belize. So why is banking in Belize so bad? Well, there's one main reason, and it isn't even Belize's fault, or the fault of the banks in Belize. In fact, if you had to blame anyone, you'd blame the US for making it so difficult for Belize banks to establish correspondent relationships, because that's the problem. Instead of using legitimate US correspondent banks, Belize banks, they're forced to use a second-tier correspondent network that is more commonly found in high-risk industries like gaming, gambling, and Forex, and often handles banks in low-quality African countries. Not exactly the kind of neighborhood that you want to be banking in. This means that transfers in and out of offshore accounts domiciled in Belize, they need to go through third parties instead of direct correspondence. This adds time, complexity, and extra fees to international transfers. Now, like I said, if you're only sending money to and from accounts in Belize, then this doesn't matter to you, and Belize is exactly where you should be banking. But if you don't have a need to bank in Belize, then depositing funds here, it makes no sense. So why does everyone think Belize is an attractive offshore banking hub? Well, while Belize isn't great at securing correspondent relationships, they have incredible marketers. I'm not going to name names here, but these guys have struck up partnerships with massive online platforms. They hand out handsome commissions anytime a new bank account is opened, and they understand how to take advantage of the fake pay-to-play banking awards that are out there. As a result, they get positioned as one of the best places to bank offshore. But we don't accept commissions, and we don't put any value in those pay-to-play awards. What we do look at are the fundamental drivers of security, stability, and being able to access your money. And strong correspondent relationships are at the heart of that equation. Now, next up is another jurisdiction that is popular in the offshore world, which is Puerto Rico. Now listen, Puerto Rico is a great place, and if you're an American, it probably has the best tax advantages anywhere in the world short of renouncing. But from our perspective, Puerto Rico is not an offshore banking hub, despite the fact that there are so many offshore banks here. If you take a closer look, you'll notice a few interesting trends. First, the banks in Puerto Rico, they aren't really banks, they're international financial entities, or IFEs, and in almost all cases, they're set up for one of four reasons. The first reason is that an IFE can be used to meet some of the requirements to qualify for those US tax advantages that I just mentioned. And basically, you set up an IFE, you open an office and hire some staff, and you get yourself a financial institution in the process. The second reason is also tax related. Essentially, if you own and invest through a licensed financial institution, you may be able to defer some of the taxes indefinitely. Now, I'm not advocating either of these paths, and if you do want to explore these or any other tax optimization strategies, talk to a qualified tax advisor who understands your options. The third reason why people open IFEs in Puerto Rico is to facilitate banking for a closed group of individuals or entities, either to pool capital and invest collectively or other legitimate financial reasons. And the final reason that we commonly see people set up an IFE is because they're cheap. not the person, but the IFE itself. You can essentially set up your own bank without committing the millions of dollars in capital that it would take in any other jurisdiction. So it's a less expensive route of obtaining a quasi-banking license. Now, notice how none of these scenarios have anything to do with serving the general public who just want to open an offshore bank account. Don't get me wrong, there are a few IFEs that do offer offshore banking. But here's the thing. There's one main reason why we don't think Puerto Rico is worth exploring when it comes to offshore banking. And that reason is that you can access all of the same benefits that Puerto Rican banks offer with significantly larger banks along with FDIC insured accounts in the United States. And that includes similar, sometimes lower deposit levels, along with the ability to open accounts 100% remotely. Plus, you'll almost always be able to access a wider range of services, more affordable international transfers, and more responsive customer support. On the other hand, if you're an American citizen and you're looking for offshore banking for reasons tied to diversification, a broader selection of investments, foreign currency exposure, or any number of other reasons why you'd want to bank offshore, you should be exploring more sophisticated banking hubs instead, which I just covered in a video on offshore banking for Americans, which I'll have linked in the description for you below. Now, the next jurisdiction that I want to talk about is the Cook Islands. Now, one important caveat here. If you structured a Cook Islands trust, you are probably struggling to open bank accounts. If you can open a Cook Islands bank account for your trust, you should, even as a backup. But are the Cook Islands a good banking hub? No. But it is an excellent asset protection jurisdiction that has proved itself useful for citizens from a wide range of countries. But you have one banking option here, which doesn't give you access to anything you can't find in other jurisdictions. But we're not telling you to avoid the Cook Islands because of a weak selection of products or services. We're telling you to avoid the Cook Islands because of correspondent banking, just like Belize. Now, admittedly, the correspondent relationships in the Cook Islands, they are stronger than Belize right now. But they've faced challenges in the past, and they have had correspondents cut off, leaving the clients without access to their funds for months on end. We're not predicting that this happens again, but we are big proponents of risk management. And if you have an account in the Cook Islands or any other small isolated jurisdiction, and your bank loses its correspondent relationships, that's a single point of failure. When that happens, you can't access your money. So those are 3 jurisdictions that we get asked about a lot. But here are a few rapid fire countries that you might be considering that we don't think should be on your list of possibilities. First up, I want to talk about some structuring jurisdictions, which basically means places that you should consider for setting up companies, foundations, and trusts, but not for opening offshore accounts. These include countries and territories like the British Virgin Islands, which has extremely limited banking options, but excellent offshore corporations. Then there's the Seychelles, which is no longer an offshore banking hub, but is a popular jurisdiction for offshore entities. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which was a popular structuring hub for unlicensed forex brokers, but never offered suitable banking options. Nevis, which offers very interesting asset protection options, in fact, often gets paired up with the Cook Islands Trust, but the banking options here, they're extremely limited and they don't offer any unique value. And then there's the Marshall Islands, which is a common place for Americans to structure offshore, but Marshall does not offer any suitable banking options for foreign non-residents. Again, people contact us about opening accounts in these countries, and it's usually because of some poorly informed blogger or influencer that's telling them to bank there. But the point is, these countries or territories, they're not suitable for banking, even though they can offer suitable structures depending on what you're trying to achieve. There are also the residency jurisdictions. These are countries you might be considering for a second or third residency, but they don't offer straightforward access to offshore bank accounts or any banking options for non-residents. These jurisdictions include Malta, which is notoriously difficult for opening accounts as a non-resident, and even for Malta corporations. The reason for this is simple. Malta isn't a banking hub, it's a booking center, which means it's where major international banks domicile international accounts for large corporate clients, not for individuals and not for small offshore companies. Another example of a residency jurisdiction that often gets confused with banking is the UAE. Though I do need to be careful here because the UAE does have non-resident banking options, though they're nothing special and they do have important legal challenges that you need to be aware of. I'll be digging into this in a future video, so if you're considering the UAE for banking, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notified when we publish that video. Another jurisdiction that walks the line between being a structuring jurisdiction and a residency jurisdiction is Cyprus. Now, like Malta, Cyprus is a popular jurisdiction for foreigners seeking residency in the EU. And if you're getting residency, you can open a bank account in Cyprus. In fact, unlike Malta, if you have a Cyprus company, you can usually open bank accounts relatively easily. But if you are a foreign non-resident seeking an offshore account, well, Cyprus is becoming much more difficult to access and has far fewer options than it did even a couple years ago. There are also countries that I shouldn't even have to mention, like Vanuatu, Grenada, Comoros, and basically any country or territory that is not recognized by the UN. Think Northern Cyprus or Western Sahara as two basic examples. Don't bank there. So those are all countries, if you are looking for an offshore bank account, that you probably shouldn't bank in. Again, reasons vary from not having stable correspondence to not offering suitable accounts or simply not being a banking hub in the first place. So now you can avoid these 11 countries and instead focus on the places that you should be banking. And to help you with this, I've asked the team to include a link to our free guide, Where to Bank Offshore, in the pinned comment below. This is an excellent resource to help you navigate your options, figure out which country best matches your profile, and even navigate account opening challenges. It's free, so grab your copy. You should also watch this recent video that I did on the 10 countries you should be considering for offshore banking, which you can access right here. So go ahead, click that, and I'll see you there right now.